Howdy, class.
Howdy.
How are y'all doing this morning?
Wonderful.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to show you this video right here, and then we'll get into our lesson for today.
I love those plants. Those are so cool.
That's pretty cool, right? I just found it last night. But, alright, well, who in here is or has been a green hand? That's it? Who thinks they have a green thumb?
Nope.
Have any of y'all have any of y'all ever transplanted a plant before?
Yes.
Yeah, Dad.
The reason why I'm asking all these plant questions is, and the video is, we're going to talk about asexual plant propagation today. So I want you to start thinking a little green today. Well, today there's several procedures to perform asexual plant propagation, but the one we're aiming for to go over today is air layering. And today we're going to define the term layering. We're going to discuss the proper steps to employ air layering propagation. We're also going to identify parts of the plants involved in the propagation. Then we'll analyze a case scenario, and we'll go over as a class recalling procedures in air layering. Well, we'll start by asking this question. Does anybody know what layering propagation is? No? Can you give it a guess, maybe?
Maybe where you put one piece another and wrap it or something?
Did you say air layering?
Yes, ma'am.
Air layering?
Yes.
Is like you put it into a different, you open up two wounds and put them into each other and like wrap them with something, I think.
Something like that. Y'all are on track. Y'all are kind of near what we're going to be going over. But layering is a technique where roots are formed prior to the stem being removed from the parent plant. So what that does, it decreases growth time, and you have more plants faster and more mature, rather than having to wait like several months or maybe even years for that plant to reach maturity like that parent plant that was taken off.
Is that what that guy was doing in the video?
Oh, I just wanted you to see something neat, just capture your attention. I know it's early this morning, probably sleepy a little bit, but I'm going to pass around some illustration handouts to y'all, so you can kind of see and get an idea of what I'm talking about as I continue on through the lesson. Wait, one more for well, as you see right here on this illustration handout that I passed around, I have what today we're going to be talking about is a air propagation for a dicot plant. Does anybody know what the difference between a monocot and a dicot is?
There's a bunch of different variations really on dicot. Of course, you've got two seed leaves. We got branch spination on your leaves. It's going to be a taproot.
Mm-hmm. What about as far as where the vascular cambium is located? You see, in dicots, it's more of like straws, just bundled all together in the middle. and for the that's monocot, and for dicotyledons, it's surrounding the xylem. But that's because dicots have true wood and monocots don't really have wood. They're just kind of like, think of sticks together, you know? It's not one true big formed a wood, but it's just made up of just a bunch of little, it's composed all together. But I guess I'll start by showing you a video after I discuss with you. I'm going to talk to you this. I'm going to walk you through the steps of how to perform air layering, and then we're going to watch a video so you can key in what I said to what you actually have to do. But to perform air layering, you need the bark to be slipping, and that occurs very early in the spring, and you want to do this then because it just got out of sleeping from going through a harsh cold winter, and you want to select a let's say an apple tree. Apple tree orchards use this type of propagation a lot because one, they may have hundreds and thousands of trees, and that particular cultivar of apples may not be what the consumers want, so they're going to put a different kind of tree in there. And if it takes a long time to get a tree to grow and give enough fruit where you make money. And what they would do is just cut off, or what you could do is what we're doing right now. Well, I'm thinking ahead for tomorrow's lesson, but there's this way where you can cut off the trunk of the tree and put what these things called scions inside, like to match up with some of the rings on that tree, and you'll actually get another tree to grow from that old tree. So it cuts down like growing time by 3 to 5 years or something like that. But well, the first step is just kind of look at. I guess you could see right here on this to the bottom left corner of your handout. You're going to select a branch or the actual stem of the tree, and you're going to select about 3 to 4 inches. I don't want, maybe 5, but that's kind of pushing it. But you want to select, let's say, a branch, and well, you want that branch to have a lot of leaves on it, because whenever you remove that part of the plant and then grow it in another location, then you're going to have that plant having enough leaves to sustain its growth. But once you select the space of where you want to start that propagation, you're going to do is cut. And what horticulturists, the term they use is called girdling. And when you girdle this tree, you're going to put a sharp knife into the bark, and you want to be real gentle with this, because remember, you're using a sharp knife, so you don't want to cut or hurt yourself, and you don't want to harm the plant by cutting in too deep and messing up its growth pattern. And once you cut that bark off, you're going to see the wood underneath, and it's got this really thin silvery layer, and that's called the vascular cambium and the phloem. And what you want to do is just kind of scrape that silvery part off just a little bit all around the bark, but make sure you take it all off, because if you leave any left, that plant's is going to heal, and what you're trying to accomplish is not going to happen. And once you take that vascular cambium, that phloem off, by removing the phloem, okay, let me go on this. I have a picture on the top right, and it shows auxin going down, right? H2O goes up. H2O goes up through the xylem, and that's the wood part that you don't want to cut into and hurt, because if you disrupt the water supply, then those leaves are going to die. but you want to remove the phloem because you want the phloem, the auxin to stop where you created that cut, and when it stops there, it's going to stimulate root growth, and that's where you're going to get your air layering propagation from. Well, after removing the phloem, you're gonna get some moist sphagnum peat moss, and you don't want it too wet, because if you get it too wet, then you can have some problems such as like fungi or like plant disease occur. And you're gonna wrap this around the cut that you made, and then you're gonna surround that with a polyethylene wrap. Does anybody know what the common name for polyethylene is? Plastic, correct. Okay, and the reason for putting the plastic around the sphagnum moss is to prevent water from escaping, and kind of like a greenhouse effect, and to keep the temperature low, and also it allows oxygen to enter where the soil is. And after you put that plastic around, you want to tie a rubber band or a little piece of wire, or twist ties on both ends of that really tightly. That way you won't have any water kind of seeping out of any of those locations. And then the last thing you would do is you'd put foil paper around that, because you don't want sunlight to inhibit the root growth. And it's also kind of like a temperature control too. But yeah, we'll go into. I found this video. I looked at a lot of videos, and this is the one that I found most agreeable with. I'm going to point out some things that I think he could have done better, but we'll just go ahead and get into it.
Do you know this guy?
No, I don't know this guy. But it's bonsai. Does anybody know what bonsai is?
Making a really old tree small.
Yeah. It's like, cutting back the limbs of the tree and making this tree get mature, but keeping it really, really tiny. Is that correct? Yeah.
Food Network hollered or something.
We're quite happy, rooted through well, and today we're going to be layering this tree for you. This is a technique that a lot of people seem to find difficulty with, but it's really very, very simple. One of the things I found important in success with air layering is the timing. It's very early spring, and the buds of the trees are just starting to go green.
When would you perform this type of propagation?
This spring.
Very early spring. Yes, that's correct.
That old boy ain't around here.
We're just starting to see the beginning of leaf, and so this is a time that in the past I've found to be very successful with broadleaf trees. So I'm going to walk you through the technique of air layering this type of material. At this point here I've marked where we're going to be removing the bark. There's no reason why we have to go an exact circle.
You want to mark where you're going to be removing the bark, because you don't want to remove too much. Because if you say you cut this out and then you cut a big chunk out like that, well, you're going to have to continue that cut, because that area is exposed, and you don't want anything to not create root growth.
Around the bark, part of the bark that we're going to remove, it can be at an angle, so that can give us ultimately a nice root spread, which will allow us to plant the tree on the slant. So now, having marked this up, we're going to completely remove this strip of bark, and that's a fairly simple process, basically just cutting into the bark and then progressively just lifting that away.
What tool would you use for this?
Pocket knife.
A pocket knife? You would need a really sharp one. And also remember, keep in mind that you are using a knife, so you don't want to cut yourself or even damaging the tree, because we're trying to create a new life or a continued life out of this plant.
I have a question. Sorry.
Yes, ma'am?
Is there a proper tool that you're supposed to use in doing that?
No, it's just a sharp knife. Any kind of sharp, knife would be it. Just because you're going to have to cut into the bark. You wouldn't use like loppers or anything because you might cut too deep in. And that's when you run into trouble of cutting into that xylem and interrupting the water flow going up.
No matter how like large in diameter the bark is, like can you do little ones and big ones?
Yeah, you can do, yes ma'am, you can. I don't know about as far as, I'd say the most maybe 5 or 6 inches in diameter is what I've seen. But in terms of like say the century tree at Texas A&M campus, I don't think that would be viable if you did that to the trunk.
Don't be.
You wouldn't agree.
Don't pick an eye for that tree.
There would be a lot of people looking after you.
We need to use a fairly sharp knife for this, so that it.
I'm going to go ahead and forward a little bit. And you can see him just kind of taking that bark off, and then if you notice, it's slipping off, kind of. It's just getting green.
Sap underneath it, and as you can see, it just pops off and leaves this nice.
So if you don't do it in the spring, it'd be harder?
You wouldn't. I don't think you would.
You couldn't do that?
Yeah. I mean, not that. It's just, I don't think you'd get any roots really. The chance of that occurring is decreased a lot, just because you want to do it. This is the best time. Because I mean, when would you transplant trees? Would you transplant them in the middle of the summer or in the early spring?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't want to shock the tree or anything.
Does that have anything to do with like the moisture content and the temperature of the soil?
Well, in terms of what?
When you choose to do your new propagation at that point.
Can you repeat that question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so does time of year have anything to do with the temperature of the soil or the moisture content of the soil? In other words, doing it in the spring is better to do it in the spring than the fall for those reasons?
No, it's just mainly strictly because of the bark. It's just easier to handle and manipulate for what we're trying to accomplish. Any other questions?
Having removed all the bark, now what we need to do is give the sapwood a little spray.
What is he doing right there?
Giving the sap a little straight.
Well, I mean, he's calling it sapwood, but we would call it the phloem. Remember I told you that there's parts of this video that I agree with, but some of the terms that he's using, for the sake of this lesson, I'm going to kind of edit it to kind of match what we're trying to learn.
So
But
sapwood is the same as phloem?
I'm not sure. I'm going to have to get back to you on that either at the end of the class or tomorrow during our lesson on cuttage propagation.
What that does is remove the cambium, and it's a cambium that will actually bring the sugars, the carbohydrates from the leaves down to the roots. By removing that, the sugars build up in the top layer of bark that remains and creates callus tissue, and ultimately that's what generates roots. So I have to go over this whole tree now and give this wood a little scrape until you can see here now the colour is coming up nice and white. Final stage in the preparation, the layering of this material, now that we've cleaned all the cambium away, is just to recut this upper edge of the bark. The reason for that is it gets rid of any tissue that's been damaged and bruised.
What causes the roots to form right here?
He said the sugar is coming down.
Yes, there's these sugars that from the leaves that go down and kind of supplement the roots at the bottom of the plant, and within these sugars is that hormone auxin, which again is going to stimulate root growth. Once you'll see as once we get more into the video.
While we were cleaning away the old bark and cleaning away the cambium, it gives us nice, clean cut, exposed cells that will tend to root much faster. The next stage in this air layering is to wrap some plastic around the trunk. And for this I just use a lightweight plastic bag. This is going to be used to retain the sphagnum moss that we're going to encourage this tree to root into. And temporarily I just use a little bit of stretchy tape just to hold that in place until we get...
What's the name of the growing medium that you place within this polyethylene wrap? Sphagnum moss. Correct. And he's using tape to, as you notice, to keep the plastic tight, and he's going to go ahead and put it on top once he places that sphagnum moss within the polyethylene wrap.
Could that tape be like too tight on there, or is it?
Well, you want it really tight, so you want to kind of make it air sealed to the point, because if you have that sphagnum moss right here and it's moist, and say you have it loose, well, that water can drip out, and it's going to create that. It's going to make that growing medium grow dry, and then roots aren't going to grow. And also, you want to kind of put it on the top too, because you don't want water to perspirate, and you don't want added water. Say it rains and it kind of seeps through in, and it makes that sphagnum moss just really, really wet, and you can run into difficulties with that.
Until we get it filled with moss.
Do you remember why I said we needed to use polyethylene wrap or plastic wrap?
To create an environment.
What does this environment do?
Like retains moisture and makes the tree want to grow roots.
Yeah, and again, it also allows oxygen to enter, and like she said, it prevents water from coming out.
That leaves us a nice little coconut we can now pack with the moss. Also, we're going to be using here is sphagnum moss. It's not particularly high quality moss, but it's well soaked in water. It's nice and damp, but it's not dripping. Basically, what we need to do is pack this bag really tightly with this moss. To be honest, I don't use rooting hormone in this method. I've never found it particularly helps to increase the level of success. The only failures I've ever had with this air layering method are when I've been a little bit too enthusiastic and cut the air layer away from the parent plant too early.
Did you hear him right there? He ran into trouble before. The only thing that he's run into trouble using sphagnum moss. You can use you can also put powder a hormone on there to increase the stimulation of the roots, but I want to avoid that for right now until we actually learn how to properly handle fertilizers, because it can be a pretty dangerous thing if you mishandle it incorrectly. But okay, yeah, that's right.
The reason for using the plastic is we're going to be able to see when the...
Oh, that's right. I had asked the things that he's running a problem for, and after you do this, place the plastic over and tighten the ends of the plastic, then you're going to need to wrap that in foil, and this particular gentleman doesn't really necessarily do that. He watches for the roots to grow, but you want that foil paper to be around there because you don't want sunlight to mess with what you're trying to accomplish. And that's that video on air layering. it just goes on and continues. He just talks about Bondi and whatnot. But our lesson would be on air layering. So how many people are in the class? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I don't know if it'd be feasible to split the class. I guess we could split everyone up in pairs of 2. 2 or 3. It's up to you, 2 or 3. But everyone will get a handout. Here you go.
My partner in guitar? Yay!
I guess we can have 2 groups of 3 and 1 group of 2, correct?
I don't know.
Did you get one?
So far.
Yeah, we have one.
Here. So, I have a.
Short. Oh.
I'm going to give you 5 minutes to read over this case study, and after that we'll just kind of discuss the questions on it.
I feel bad for this guy with his name.
That's right.
Are we supposed to discuss it in our groups, or we need to?
Yeah, you can, once you finish reading it, you can kind of discuss the questions that follow the story.
He used a serrated knife. You're not supposed to use a serrated knife because it does more damage than good to the tree.
Did you use any foils throughout all of them?
No, he wrapped it in foil. Yeah, he wrapped it in foil, but he just twisted the plastic and put a lot of air and
Like water in or out?
and then he kept checking everything. Like, you're not supposed to keep checking.
You can use the illustration handout to kind of help you out with the steps and what he may have missed or what he did properly.
Did you maybe cut a little too much bark off?
I don't think that the amount of bark you cut off affects the size of the tree.
Can we go 5 minutes after the arrow? Yeah, that's just 40 minutes right there.
basically north is down. Because it does name.
Y'all got about a minute left, so.
He exposes the elements further to the flow. That's a big one.
Oh, yeah.
Bart should pay attention to school.
Bart needs his notes.
Maybe oil paper too tight.
We're teaching Adam, right?
Yeah. Oh, the very inner part, yeah.
You know,
That's where the
split
water
it
is.
and then you can routine it.
Probably the water trouble, so it's true.
I'm trying to make it as good as sequence. Or something. You can help me with that.
Okay.
Supposed to be stagnant, it's not supposed to be stagnant.
I think it
Yeah,
was just
no, but
starting
we
them off.
Yeah, I think
Before she didn't do.
And this is.
Okay, did everybody get a chance to read the case study?
I have an idea.
And did you get a chance to discuss with your partners?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and go over the questions at the bottom of the story. And the first one being, repeat the steps Barth did in his propagation scenario. So what are the steps that he did to...
They had to come home so they could be where the apple trees were. They couldn't do it from a distance.
This is true?
You had to go to the store.
Follow stuff.
He had go to the store and buy your supplies. What
And
else?
he cut 9 inches off of the bark. 9 inches of the bark off.
Okay, and then after that?
Scrape off the flow.
Okay.
It's a rated pocket knife.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not
And after he did that,
He wrapped it.
with,
Twist ties.
Stagnant peat moss.
okay, and then you polyethylene wrap, correct? And then the final thing he did was, he did tie those at the
Just
end.
twisting the ties.
And what was the final thing he did?
Wrapped it with foil.
Correct. Now, y'all already kind of answered that. I just wanted to let y'all know Bartholomew, the character Bartholomew, I was watching Spaceballs last night, and that's the name of the dog in there. But his name's Barf, for short. Okay. But can you recall can y'all recall the materials that he needed for this project?
He needed a pocket knife, he needed the moss, he needed the saran wrap, he needed the tin foil, and he needed tape to hold it in place.
Correct. Did he use the proper materials though? The
No.
materials that he bought, were they just feasible for this kind of thing?
Some, but not all of them. He shouldn't have used a serrated pocket knife.
Okay, this is true. And why wouldn't you want to use a serrated pocket knife?
It's gonna,
It wouldn't scrape it all, blown off.
and it's
Yeah.
probably gonna damage more because
Exactly.
it doesn't have like a sharp blade when it's serrated, like the edges.
Exactly. When you're scraping that phloem off, you might miss some patches of phloem, but at the same time you might dig in a little too deep and then harm that xylem and just damage the tree, that part of the tree you're trying to transplant. What was the purpose of the polyethylene sheet?
Keep
Wrap around.
Keep
moisture in.
moisture in and let oxygen in.
Yeah, and let oxygen come in. Yes, and also to keep the temperature kind of low too. List the mistakes that Barth may have made, and just kind of explain why you think he made these were the mistakes.
Is the propagation of that plant more dependent on oxygen or carbon dioxide for growth?
For growth? Why would you say carbon? I mean, just as long as it's outside and getting proper sunlight, because you still got to think about that tree needs to sustain life. Like those leaves are still going to perform photosynthesis and whatnot, but it's the oxygen's something you need for roots to grow. I mean, when your grass is packed in too tight and you're having trouble with growth, well, you're going to have to run something to punch holes through that soil just to help water seep in and also to aerate the soil and promote oxygen. Oh, did you notice anything about the cut he made?
It was way too big.
Yeah, 9 inches. I mean, that's a pretty big. I mean, let's say my foot's a foot. So 9 inches would be like that. That's about like 9 inches of bark. And depending on the tree, it can be good or it can be really bad.
Apple trees aren't that big, so
Yeah. Oh, I guess for this, I
that
mean.
tree was probably freaking out.
Okay. Well, as you read in the last paragraph, he waited 4 weeks to check, and when you check root growth from air layering, you give it 4 to 6 weeks, and sometimes as much as 8 weeks, although that's very unlikely. Should have been patient. And like you, as we talked about, the big thing that might have just messed up this whole experiment and of Bartholomew was a serrated knife. You're supposed to use a sharp knife, not serrated or anything. We're not cutting meat or anything like that. But I guess what could a barf have done to successfully create root growth in the girdle cutting area? And that's when a smaller area might be better.
Scrape the foam off better with a flat blade.
With proper utilities, correct?
Could have got on the website and got the notes he was missing.
He should have done research, and that's the big thing, you know?
I hope you didn't get a job in horticulture.
Like he did get a college education, and he did take a class on horticulture, and he did lose his notes. But just because you've learned something, you should always go back and recheck review what you know. Just because you might miss key steps, and you don't want to do anything wrong, because you want to create a successful propagation. We'll go over kind of what we talked about today. I'm going to ask a few questions, like why was foil paper needed in air layering propagation? Block the sunlight, correct. What and temperature control? This is true. What hormone is associated with root growth? Auxin. And does the phloem flow down or up? The phloem and the xylem. Remember we talked about that earlier? What transport what to what? You can look at your illustration. I mean, the answer might be there. What goes down? Okay, and what goes up? Xylem. Yeah, so water is transported up to the leaves, and what the leaves synthesize goes down into the bottom of the plant. What does the term girdle mean?
Something women wear to make them look skin.
I mean, this is true, but for the sake of our lesson, what would the term girdling be used?
It's a cut that goes all the way around.
Correct. It's the cut that you make to go around and take off the bark. It's just a fancy term. It's a term that you'd use in the greenhouse or as a horticulturist.
You're a tree trim.
And again, what was the part of the plant that you scraped off? Phloem, correct. Well, if we have time, and if you want, if somebody wants to go on the board and just draw each step of air layering propagation, you can go ahead and.
We take turns, and one of us doing all of them.
Well, that's what I meant.
Oh, okay. Go for it, Sarah. Well, you got it.
and just kind of help each other out, just with the first step or the steps.
Or would you like a picture or just listing the steps?
You could do either or. I mean, a picture would be nice.
Draw a picture.
Yes.
Just draw apple tree.
You just watched it on the video, so.
Trunk.
So you gotta grow the trunk.
Okay.
Grow the trunk.
Find your tree. Okay.
Find the tree, okay.
Yeah. I'm good, guys. There's my cut. That's a good size. You gonna cut off the bark?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's something I may have forgotten to mention. You need a marker to mark the area you're cutting because you don't want to get,
Cut off the bark.
yeah, off track.
That long girl.
Oh, that's a stone loss.
I love it. It's a pretty girl.
Everybody heart my little knife.
How did you get that bark off there with no knife?
No.
Use your fingernails.
And
Clawed it off.
I gnawed it off like a.
and I'm scraping it off so the little pieces are fun.
Nice.
There you go.
Cool.
This is a big plastic sheet that's gonna go all the way around the deck. Over the mop.
Rosie, go.
Daniel's gonna tell us about all the chemicals.
Now we're gonna take
About to get real.
a big plastic bag, wrap it around the tree, stuff all my peat moss inside of it, and we'll tap it and screw it.
Very nice. Well, fine. I guess I'll come with something to do now.
And Alexa, if you want to, you can also label kind of what everything is, just so to reinforce what we've.
Oh.
Oh, I like that.
Very nice.
Reynolds.
That's Reynolds wrap?
That's funny.
Do we have to use that specific brand? It's the best. Remember heavy duty?
Dang.
Heavy duty.
You get what you pay for.
Yeah.
Remember that.
And you wrap that all around that.
Okay.
And then you wait 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And don't check it.
And y'all did an excellent job, so y'all should give yourself a pat on the
All
back.
right.
Really quick, I just kind of want to show you. For some reason, it doesn't allow me to view the pictures closely, but this is kind of what you should expect to gain from doing this propagation.
Do a right click on it, maybe it looks like a turtle.
Yeah, put it on a branch tree.
It's just a big old clump of roots right
Oh,
there.
it's not that big.
And like right here. You
Right
cut
below
it
the root.
And put it in the
Nope.
pot. The pot.
Can you just cut up in the ground?
Yeah, just
Oh,
exit
exactly.
that. There you go.
Very nice.
Ah.
There you go.
Cool.
You see?
Like my hair in the morning.
Pretty neat, right? You see, if Bartholomew would have done everything correctly, he could have taken an apple tree with him to Lampasas, Texas,
If it would've grown.
if it would have
I
grown.
wouldn't wanna take anything.
Doug, anywhere to plant it.
Right.
Out there.
Well, today we learned how to employ plant propagation through air layering, and I'm pretty sure each one of y'all understands the proper procedures of employing these tactics. Tomorrow we're going to continue with asexual plant propagation, and throughout the week we're going to go through different kind of procedures and techniques that you can use for different kinds of plants and needs. But tomorrow would be through we're going to go through cuttage of plants. Thank you.